find the line between our
Everybody to Unity Church of Port Townsend, home of spirituality with open hearts and open minds. Whether you're here in the sanctuary or on Zoom, you're all welcome. And we'll bring everybody in with I Am Home. I am home. Why don't we do our affirmation of the intention of this community together? We are an authentic, transformative, spiritual community centered in God. We co-create a world that works for all. With that, we'll light the Christ candle and come light of God. Light of God, give light to creation, enlighten our hearts, and remain with the world. Come, light of God, give light to creation, enlighten our hearts, and remain with your world. Well, this is the fifth Sunday of the month. This is a time when our fifth Sunday of this month, and there's 4 of them in a year, and Reverend Pam gets the day off. And so I am Reverend Pam. Leslie's me. And so today should be an interesting day. The subject of the talk is, or the subject of this whole year is embodied spirituality. And one of the spiritual paths has to do with service. Today is embodied service, is what it's going to be. However, before we start that, I think we have a couple, 3 songs. So maybe, why don't everybody stand up, because I know the first one's got some pop to it. Uh, Do you want to introduce this at all, or no?
Oh, yeah, well, this first song is by your beloved Janice Stanfield that you know. And it's supposed to have a rock feel, so we'll see how rockish we can get. And talking about how the world needs all the good we can do. And the second song is by Mark Stanton Welch, How May I Serve You? And remembering, like Mother Teresa said, to try to solve the problems of the world, do small acts with great love. And that song makes me think of just helping each other through the day. So we'll start with All the Good. I cannot do all the good that the world needs, but the world needs all the good that I can do. I cannot do all the good that the world needs, but the world needs all the good that I can do. I cannot do all the good that the world needs, but the world needs all the good that I can do. I cannot do all the good that the world needs, but the world needs all the good that I can do. And then how may I serve you? How may I serve you? How may I help you through this day? How may I serve you? How may I share my love, share my life, give my time, give my life to you? How may I serve you? How may I help you through this day? How may I serve you? How may I share my love, share my life, give my time, give my life to you? How may I serve you? How may I help you through this day? How may I serve you? How may I share my love, share my life, give my time, give my life to you?
Thank you. Please be seated. And while Leslie's coming up, I want to acknowledge the 2 people holding the high watch today who are doing exactly that. How may I serve you? We got Mary and Zelfa, and they're available for personal prayer following service back in the sanctuary, should you so choose. So with that, we'll do the daily word.
So, good morning. I'm very pleased that David offered me the opportunity
Um,
So I was just saying, thank you very much.
Uh-oh.
I'm still not doing it right.
Oh, no, it has nothing to do with you. Testing, 1, 2, testing, 1, 2. Nope. Not your fault.
You want to borrow a headset?
Testing, 1, 2, testing, 1, 2. Testing, yep. You did just fine.
Thank you, Glenn. Thank you, Glenn. So, yeah. So once again, I just want to thank David for giving me the opportunity to serve this morning by being David while he is Pam. Thank you. So we all know that there are lots of languages that folks use to speak about their experiences on the path of spirit. There's the journey, there's the learnings, the teachings that go along on that path. There's the truths that we hope to realize on that path. One of those languages is in the daily word. This is the daily word for today, Sunday, April 30th. I pause to appreciate life's simplest blessings. Today, I give thanks for the simplest blessings, the small things that bring a smile to my lips and a warm feeling to my heart. A hug from a friend, a cuddle from a grandchild, or stroking the soft fur of a beloved pet fills my awareness with love. The sudden lift I get seeing a favorite person's handwriting in the mail, or the thrill of spotting a rainbow after a cleansing rain shower spark lasting happiness in my heart. Lasting happiness in my heart. These things and more remind me that true contentment is found in life's smallest moments, the everyday treasures that comprise daily life and draw me close to God. I focus on these simple blessings and grow in gratitude for my life's many gifts. Another language that is used in prayer for the spiritual journey, you're undoubtedly familiar with. In beauty may I walk all day long. May I walk through the returning seasons. May I walk. Beautifully will I possess again. Beautifully birds, beautifully joyful birds. On the trail marked with pollen, may I walk. With grasshoppers about my feet, may I walk. With dew about my feet, may I walk. With beauty, may I walk. With beauty before me, may I walk. With beauty behind me, may I walk. With beauty all around me, may I walk. With beauty above me, may I walk. In old age, wandering on a trail of beauty, lively, may I walk. In old age, wandering on a trail of beauty, living again, may I walk. It is finished in beauty. It is finished in beauty. When I first came across this poem many long years ago now, I assumed that the beauty was the beauty beyond my skin, the beauty of the natural world. And I held that story in my mind for a long time until it suddenly, on my spiritual path, one of the things that I saw was that the beauty is within. That's where the beauty happens. That's where the awareness of beauty occurs. And may I say that when you volunteer, when you engage with service in life, that is definitely one way to put yourself in an awareness of beauty, and may you walk.
Thank you, Leslie, or David. You did a nice job. Now, as we prepare to go into meditation, we'll sing Sanctuary going in and Sanctuary coming out. Find that place within you as we go into meditation where you know that you are beauty and that your path, whatever that may be, is also a path that's walked in beauty. Sanctuary.
Love prepares me to be a sanctuary, open-hearted, tried and true, with thanksgiving, I am a living sanctuary. Sanctuary, open-hearted, tried and true, with thanksgiving, I am a living sanctuary for
Sanctuary. A place of refuge. A place of protection from all the things on the outside. A place of peace. Sanctuary. How may I be a sanctuary for you? How may you be a sanctuary for me? Lord has prepared each one of us. Imbued each one of us with a spark of the divine. To be just that, a sanctuary. A place of refuge from our error thinking, for mistakes made, to be a place of refuge for relationships, community, to be a place of refuge not only for myself, but for those around me. A living sanctuary. The question is, how may I use this place to serve another? This place of peace and quietude, of knowing, of being. And like the daily word, It's the simple things. The hug, the note, the smile. And our prayers. I see my place of sanctuary having a great beacon at the top. And when I come into sanctuary to pray, that beacon is a mighty light that sends those prayers forward to light up the darkness, light up the confusion, provide rest to the weary, to provide a place of unity. So I invite you now to take all your prayer requests and drop them into your sanctuary. Pray for yourself, for others, for our shared planet. And do that now. All your children everywhere who are sick, afraid, or confused, bound by the circumstances of life. Lord, we have forgotten that we are spiritual beings having a human experience. And as spiritual beings, we are healed. And we add to this vessel, this sanctuary of prayer, all those that are in conflict this day, that they may find and seek for peace. All those who find themselves in lack this day, may they find abundance and prosperity. Those who are sick, or afraid, or confused, or just bound by the circumstances in their lives. And may they know, and may we pray that they know, that they are indeed eternal spiritual beings having a human experience. And as a spiritual being, they are healed, they are whole, and they are free at any moment and at all moments. So we send these prayers out in that great beacon of light, knowing and affirming that they will find the right and perfect place to land in right and perfect time and with right and perfect outcomes. This we affirm and this we bless as we sing Sanctuary to come back out of this time of meditation.
To be a sanctuary, open-hearted, tried and true, with thanksgiving, I am a living sanctuary for you. Lord, prepare me to be a sanctuary, open-hearted, tried and true, with thanksgiving, I am a living sanctuary for you.
so it is, and it is so. Amen.
I'll tell you a little bit about this song. The title of it is Nishkama. And Nishkama Karma is it's a spiritual practice where everything you do, all that you give, you do it without attachment to the outcome, where everything you're doing is you're doing it simply because it's yours to be done. The scorpion stings, that is his to do. And we are here to bring our minds to truth. Be it mine to love, be it mine to give with no demand is to come to you. I come to you. Do it in the name of the one. Oh, Nishkama. Do it 'cause it's yours to be done. Oh, Nishkama. Do it in the service of love. Oh, Nishkama. There's pleasures in this world. Watch them come and go. And then there are those things that never cease to flow. Express yourself in truth. Abundance there is found. Shake the shackles loose. Giving has no bounds. I'm here for you. Do it in the name of the one. Oh, Nishkama. Do it 'cause it's yours to be done. Oh, Nishkama. Do it in the service of love. Oh, Nishkama. To serve, to do, to radiate the higher you. To serve, to do, to radiate the higher you. To serve, to do, to radiate the higher you. To serve, to do, for the higher good. Do it in the name of the one. Oh, Nishkama. Do it 'cause it's yours to be done. Oh, Nishkama. Do it in the service of love. Oh, Nishkama. Do it in the service of love. Oh, Nishkama. Do it 'cause it's yours to be done.
Thank you very much. Boy, what a trio up here. I'll tell you what, with Claire and Kelly and Ron.
That's another one he wrote. So.
Yeah, it's another one you wrote. I know it. So we're going to keep coming up with new topics so we can see what else you can come up with. Well, as I said earlier, today's subject is embodied spirituality, embodied service, and it's a pathway to look at, how do I be in service? And as the song said, we're kind of constantly in service. The question is, how does that come out? As I thought about this thing, I was thinking about the path of service, and that took me to some teachings that I was familiar with and had really studied, 15, 20 years ago, 30 years ago maybe. And it was indigenous people's spirituality. The medicine wheel is what I studied. And as I went back to look at that and kind of put how I wanted to frame where I'm going to go with this talk, I started looking at some of my old course material way back when. And so there's a couple of things we need to know about earth-based spirituality, particularly when they talk about the medicine wheel. First of all, there's the 4 cardinal gates, the 4 directions: the east, the south, the west, and the north. In the teachings, each of those gates are a gateway into the Great Spirit. It's like a spoke on a wheel. And each of those gates, in fact, each of the subsets within those, between those gates, have an animal totem that are an energy that's associated with that gate. So if we were in the south, it might be the energy of bear. And then there's a kind of a teaching around that. Why would you use bear? And all that kind of thing. Anyway, so as I'm framing this because I'm going to walk through this with you, and then we're going to get on to, eventually we're going to get to the Nehemiah retreat, which is what I'm going to go to next week, and go do work at Unity. So this is all leading up to sacred service. There's a couple ways there's lots of ways that the 4 directions are used. One of which says that we are 4-part individuals. We're a physical person, a mental person, a social person, and a spiritual person. So in the East, they say that's the mental place. That's where we get our enlightenment and intuitions, knowledge. Those are where our thoughts are showed up, is in our mental state. In the South is the physical side. That's about growth and development. You think about the sun going through the course of a day, or the course of a season. It rises up to the south, and then to the west. Is that me, or is that? I have no idea. Oh, good. To the west. Okay. And the west is where we have our kind of, where the sun's setting, we gather the fruits of our labors. That's where we get the introspection and the visions, those kinds of things. In the north is the social side of life. And that's the place where all of the mishmash of being a human here on the planet, all of the angst and all of the joy come together. And that's where those ingredients are necessary to make the whole person. Along with this teaching is this axiom that comes out, and this plays out all through the teachings. It says this: everyone is a house with 4 rooms: a physical, a mental, an emotional, and a spiritual room. Most of us tend to live in one room over another. But unless we go to every room every day, even if only to keep it aired out, we are not a complete person. So in terms of the pathways to the Great Spirit, or pathways to God, to the universe, in the spiritual teachings, there's the 4 directions. There's a direction of a pathway of sacrament, a pathway of service, a pathway of incarnation, and a pathway of truth and knowledge. I'll quickly go through 3 of them, and the 4th one, the pathway of service, is the one I want to focus on. So in the East is the buffalo. And the buffalo was considered the giveaway animal. That is that, particularly for the Plains Indians, the buffalo was their form of substance. It gave them clothing, it gave them shelter, it gave them food, it gave them all the stuff they needed to make all their tools with, and it was reverenced by those individuals. It was an animal that served the community. But it had to do that, it had to sacrifice its life. And they understood that when they took that life of that animal, they did it in a way that had meaning to it. It wasn't just for fun, so to speak. It was the way that they were going to, that animal sacrifice itself for the community. And that's what the path of the sacrament is about. It's giving yourself up, giving a part of yourself up. For this case, for our spiritual nature, giving our ego up to allow spirit to thrive instead of having it edged out. Ego, edging God out. So, and there are times that we're ego-driven, and God can't be found. It's very difficult. But as we put the ego aside and allow spirit to step in, then clearly God can be found. So it's all about this whole idea of this place of sacrament. If you're walking the path of sacrament, you're in a place where you're letting go of all of the worldly things in order to navigate your life. So you're working on particularly on a spiritual pathway, and perhaps exclusively, that could be what you end up doing. The other totems, the other animals in this line going to the Great Spirit is a turkey, which is really a flying buffalo. And you think about it. They use the feathers for the headdresses, for the smudging, lots of other kinds of things. And then there was, what else did they have on this course? Oh, a turtle, Mother Earth. And finally, owl, for the great vision and the wisdom that comes with that. The south is the path of service. And I'll come back to this in a moment. I'm just going to give you the highlight on this one. So bear is the totem animal for that pathway, that doorway. And it's about the energy of bear, the strength and the power and the nurturing part of bear. And the question is, how may I give of myself? The path of service. How may I give of myself? First path was what do I give up of myself? The second one is how may I give of myself? And bear people generally are healers, warriors, and leaders. And their job is to give up for the community. Bears, in this family thing, are very tight-knit, and very strong and helpful for each other. So in the West is incarnation, and that's the gateway is held by eagle. The question is there, how may I call forth the incarnate Christ within me? What path do I have to do? What do I need to do? Now the eagle is a great symbol, because the eagle is a symbol for the Great Spirit manifest on the planet. So the most sacred of all animals would be the eagle. And it flies very high up to the Great Spirit and makes this transition back and forth between the Great Spirit and us. Let's see what else I want to say about that. So the path of incarnation reveals our spirituality and the part of us within us, the divinity within us. And the other critters on this thing are butterfly, transformation, the bat, the death experience, and grouse. It does a spiral dance, and it's a symbol about this whole journey is a spiral as we move our way up through better understanding of who and what we are. And finally in the north, and that's the gateway really of the seekers for truth and knowledge. And the question is, how may I find truth? The Seeker's Path is one of a lot of study, a lot of introspection, gaining wisdom, and is often a place where they start building the spiritual eyes to see the truth with a capital T. And we're all in this room doing exactly that. So, we're part of what we do here is to help each one of us get or tune up our spiritual eyes so we can see the capital truth, capital T truth. Other energies are the hawk for vision, the goose for endurance, because it takes endurance to walk this path, and the wolf is the pathfinder. So the path of service, this is where I wanted to line up. This is the path that says, how may I serve, and how may I serve myself, you, and the community? And how do we do that in a sacred way? This is the path that Jesus walked with heavy feet. Now, no doubt we're all on all four at the same time, so you can't escape it. They're all intertwined, interconnected. But Jesus' path of demonstration and inclusion and the healings and all those things were the path of service. He kept telling us over and over and over again, we're to be of service to clothe the unclothed, feed the hungry, heal the wounded, all of those kinds of things. And that's the path that is the strongest one, and that's the path that's called me. Even though I've done a lot of study in other parts of it, this is where I always end up. And it's, unfortunately for me, is where I can't get a handle around the word no. And so it's just like standing here. It is a path that it's a path that I can do, I guess. Maybe that's the best way. When I look at my life, service has been a part of it since as far back as I can remember. I was a Cub Scout, a Boy Scout, Scout. I went into public service and had a whole career there. And none of that was really, I didn't set out to do that necessarily, but I sure ended up doing that. And as I go back and look at that, I can say, I can see that. So, as I said, Bear was the one that opens the door because of this power. Also on this path is the beaver for being industrious and the builder. For those of us on this path, you can think about that one. Or the ants carrying heavy loads, and this is about carrying a heavy load, is for us to carry loads that are heavier than we think we can handle. The ant's a great demonstration of that it carries a whole lot, right? Well, oftentimes we cut ourselves short about what falls on our shoulders. And finally, the squirrel, the gatherer and the planter. And the squirrel is the one that's always figuring out where to hide the nuts for the winter, for the dark times. Let's see, where are we going? So the fifth principle of unity is that we are to live out our divinity on the planet. We're to know the truth of who and what we are and share that, not just hold it in. And service is the way we can do that, obviously. Sacred service, and the kind of service I'm talking about, has a sense of intentionality to it. And that's the mindset, that I'm intentionally doing this in service. I may get gratification out of it, I may not get gratification out of it, but I'm doing it in service to my community or to others or to myself. The Dalai Lama said this, the intelligent way to be selfish is to work for the welfare of others. service provides, especially intentional service, provides a transformational element to just doing something. It could transform the reason why I do service and makes the service not a have to, but a want to, a joy. I think this is the lesson of this particular path. That we are all connected with the whole, and that whatever we do has impact on the whole. If we take that as true, then when we do something, we should be intentional about it so it doesn't impact negatively on the whole. So, like the song said, we're here to do something and not to be attached to it, but do it for the betterment. There's a Buddhist saying that says this: if you deeply observe, everything is a teacher. And this is true for whatever path you are on. And this brings me to the pilgrimage I do every year to Nehemiah, for the Nehemiah retreat. So this whole thing started about, 18, 20 years ago. And I was in Kansas City for a conference. And I wandered onto the ground. This is like in February. I wandered on the grounds of Lee Summit, Missouri, Unity Village. And if anybody's been in Missouri in the winter, it's really a pretty foreboding place. It's gray. Most of the trees are deciduous, so there's no leaves on the trees. It was cold, really cold, and windy. And the place was deserted. And this is like Tuesday or something. And I didn't find a human anywhere. They're all hunkered down someplace. So I'm wandering around the village, and the doors are all open, so you can go in, get warm, or you can, and I'm sure that I must have ran into somebody, but there wasn't very many people there anyways. And I went into the Fillmore Chapel, and I've told you about Peace Be Still, so I won't go through that again. But I got it. I got why this place existed. So I said, and when I came back home after that, I said, geez, we got to go to the village, go back to the village. Well, about that same period of time, they started the Nehemiah retreats. Now, what had happened to the village, now, does anybody know the story of Nehemiah? Everybody kind of got an idea what it is? So Nehemiah was a Jewish guy working for the king of Syria, I think it was. I'm not sure that's right. Samaritan. Anyway, working for the king, and he was the official wine taster. Not a bad job unless you got a crummy king. And if you got a crummy king and somebody wants to off him, they usually try to poison him with the wine. So, you really want your king to be a good guy if you're going to be the wine taster, I can tell you that. Anyway, Nehemiah was a wine taster, survived all that. And he had heard that Jerusalem had been overrun by all these warring factions going on, and that the temple had been ransacked, burnt down, the walls had been torn down, and Nehemiah had this vision that he was called to rebuild the wall. And there's lots of pieces to this story, but he was called to rebuild the wall. He went to the king and said, hey, I need to go to Jerusalem and rebuild the wall. And the king says, well, what do you need? And he said, I need some tools, people, and some whatever to go build the wall. So the king goes, great, you've been a good wine taster, you're still around, so away you go. He goes off, and in 52 days, they rebuilt the wall around Jerusalem. But they did more than rebuilding the wall. They rebuilt community. What had happened is the Jewish people and the people from Jerusalem had all been captured, pushed out, sent away, whatever was going on. And he called all of those people back, not by calling them so much, but by starting this project. And people start coming on and coming on and coming on to rebuild the wall. And then eventually they rebuilt the temple. So Nehemiah was a pretty important character. So fast forward to about 20 some odd years ago, and the village was going in a downward spiral. So it's hard to explain how big. There's 1,200 acres of land. Who have been to the Unity Village? Okay, well, good. You know what I'm talking about. It's big. And there's a lot of infrastructure. It was built in the 20s. Huge amount of forethought went into the infrastructure, really complex. There's this Spanish influence on the main corridor and the pools and all, reflective pools. It's just gorgeous. And then there's an English influence on all of the cottages across the ground. There's a golf course, and there used to be a swimming pool, and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, it was the home of the seminary for Unity. And during the 60s, 70s, and early 80s, it was a really humming place. It really started out as an intentional community, by the way, because so what had happened is the Fillmores, they were in Kansas City. They had a restaurant, a vegetarian restaurant, and they, I better run this short. I got to set this up. They had this vegetarian restaurant. They didn't get enough. They were having the Amish provide the vegetables for them. The restaurant got too popular, so they said, let's go create our own farming spot. They went out to the suburb, Lee Summit, found a couple hundred acres, started drilling water, end up hitting oil, which would be good today, but back in those days, it wasn't all that valuable. I mean, it was cheap. But at least they had some kind of income stream coming off the property. They didn't have any water, but they had the income stream. So then they bought more land to dam up a river or a creek and get the water and blah, blah, blah. So they built this huge complex, and it was filled with all these students. At one point, there's probably about 300 students coming through this place. So think of it as a college campus. That's a good way to look at it. And then the students start not coming. Fewer and fewer students were coming. Partly there was, lots of other places to find this kind of teaching, the new thought. There was other avenues for getting ordained. And all of a sudden, the whole thing was built on this population of students. You got 300 students on the grounds. You got to feed them, house them, and all this kind of thing. They're not there. In fact, they were down to, I think Pam's class was like about 40 or something like that in her class. So, and the whole model for keeping that place running was the students and the whole idea of it, the seminary. Three things happened. So, students weren't coming. The resources that they had for maintenance dwindled as the students weren't there because the tuitions paid for a lot of that maintenance stuff. So the resources went down. What else happened to it? Well, basically they didn't see the 21st century coming. They didn't see online education coming. None of that was on their radar screen. And the culmination of all this stuff is they kept deferring maintenance. And there's 3 big reflective ponds down the main corridor, and there's a bridge that goes across between Silent Unity building and the main administration building. It's called the Bridge of Faith. And the Bridge of Faith collapsed. And that was a really big wake-up call. And the wake-up call came in two ways. One is, obviously, we got a problem. But the other one was the realization, we got a problem with our thinking. They had got into a thing of lack, and the lack kept moving resources from maintenance to something else. And there was a guy named Rev Tom Lee, who was an architect and was familiar with habitat. And Tom said, I think what we ought to do, we got a lot of things crumbling here. The walls have fallen down. I think we ought to call on our community to help in rebuilding. And so they did. They called it the Nehemiah Retreat. They invited 30 to 50 people to show up. They housed us, they fed us, and they worked our butts off. And we did all sorts of things. Some of the things we couldn't do, but we could do a whole lot. And at that time, they were doing 2 or 3 of these a year, these retreats. Now they're down to 2. But over the course of that period of time, there was a transformation. In the springtime, they plant annuals. They used to plant annuals. Now they do again. But they quit doing that. So the drab of winter pulled into spring, and while the annuals made it, or the perennials made it, the annuals had to be replanted. They just didn't have the funds for that. So the rose garden stayed up, but the other things were left. And when the Nehemiah groups came in and rebuilt the gardens and planted the annuals in the spring, and the whole place blossomed. And then we started rebuilding the houses and all these things. And over the course of over the last 20 years, the Nehemiah experience for the village and for the Nehemiah retreatants is truly transformational. The grounds are transformed every year and cleaned up and spruced up. Maintenance guys are still there doing all their things every day, but it's really amazing how the intentionality placed in there to rebuild not only the physical grounds, but the thinking about, hey, here we are, we profess this whole thing about abundance, that there's enough, and that it's our negative thinking that keeps it from moving forward. The powers to be at Unity Village, had to take a real hard look at that when the bridge fell down. And what they discovered is, yes, they got into lack thinking instead of prosperity thinking. And they switched that, and they did this Nehemiah thing, and everything changed from there. The deal with it, though, I believe, is that they intentionally said, we're going to create a service vehicle that serves the whole, not just the grounds, not just our financial situation, but our community and the greater community. Today, they run about 560 weddings a year on the grounds. Think of that, they don't do them all every day of the year, so they're backing up. They've got 5 or 6 or 7 weddings over the course of a weekend. All of those, not all of them, many of the old houses that were gorgeous English Tudors have been transformed into Airbnbs, and for the wedding parties and people that just want to take a personal retreat. In my experience, that intentionality is what really has had me go back again and again and again, and I do that now every year. I had experiences where I cleaned the gutters for 70 some odd buildings. And it reminded me as I got on to about the 50th building that, you know what, we got to clean our gutters in our mind on a regular basis because they don't operate very well without it. And these gutters had not been cleaned sometimes they were falling off because there was so much junk inside the gutters. Then there was they had this old motel, because they had so many people, they just threw up this concrete tilt-up structure, 1960s UGG, and it had one of those pebble roofs with the tar and pebble on it. So when it rains really hard or hails, all the pebbles fall down and go into the gutters, so I just can put it back out. And I spent like 4 days taking 5-gallon buckets of these rocks and then putting them back on the top of this building that's sloped like this, so that next year they could all be down in the gutters again. And so I was thinking, we really got to stand guard on that negative thinking that keeps coming back and coming back and coming back. Over those pebbles are going to be pulling those 5-gallon rocks. Then I think I told you the story about we demoed this whole series of restrooms in this place called the Tea House. And there was just this huge mountain of broken tile pieces, just a huge mountain. And I was sweeping and digging them out and putting them in the dumpster. And I grabbed one, I put it in my pocket because we were asked to have something that reminds you of your retreat experience. And I'm going along, I thought, maybe that wasn't such a good one. So I grabbed another one and threw it in my pocket. So I'm getting ready for our end of the service time, and we make a paver, and everybody brings out whatever their stone or whatever, my tile. And while I'm getting ready, I take these 2 tile pieces out, and they fit exactly together. It was the whole tile, and how those 2 pieces found their way into my pocket after this mountain of tiles. Well, if you don't believe that there's unity in this community, I mean, that's a beautiful demonstration of that. And it was a story for me. It was like, hey, it's never broken. There's always another piece to the puzzle. And then the final one that I'll relay is there was a false ceiling in this tea house. The next year I went back, one of the the guy on the board for the Unity Worldwide Headquarters organization, he and I were looking at this false ceiling in the tea house and going, well, that doesn't look right. I bet there's something underneath this false ceiling. What do you think? I think so too. So we got a couple of sawzalls and we cut the ceiling out of this thing. And I know that if the people at OSHA and WISHA and all those other people would not approve of what we were doing, is we dropped the ceiling off of this thing. Drops down, and there's this gorgeous mosaic that was behind this ceiling. And you know, at the time, they were just trying to make housing, and so they covered up that. And that sometimes we just gotta go kind of outside our comfort zones in order to see that there's really some beauty above maybe a false ceiling that's out there. So I get to go back again. I'm going to be leaving on Thursday. We start work on Monday. And over the course of the 20 years I've been going back, or 18 years I've been going back, there's been wonderful friendships made, lots of really good things done, but the key for me, it keeps coming back to the intentionality. Dr. Wayne Dyer said this when his life was not going very well. And I never thought of Dr. Wayne Dyer not having a good day in his life, but it wasn't going very well. And it all started one time, and he said, what have I got to do? What have I got to do, God? And God basically said, all you got to do is be in service, Wayne. And so he woke up every morning since that discussion with God and says, how may I serve this day? And that sets the tone for his day. How may I serve this day? And his life went off into great things that happened. He was an orphan and was adopted, and a number of things go on. But when he finally clicked in that his job was to serve from his heart, that created sacred service for him. So we all are part of the context, part of the whole, so we all get to do something. And regardless of what path you're on, all of the paths interconnect. All of us walk portions of this path. The path of service is certainly one way to do it. Unity's fifth principle is we are spiritual beings having a human experience for a divine reason. Part of our divinity is feeling it, knowing it, being in that place of sanctuary. Part of our divinity is spreading it out to the world, be the light that we are. Part of our divinity is letting go of our ego, letting go of those things that are sharp edges and try to smooth those out. And it's a wonderful thing. So with that, the path of service. Be a bear. Go forth. How may I serve today? Let us pray. Sweet, sweet Spirit, Mother, Father, God. How may I serve today? Showing up and intentionally set my day to be in service and just allow the day to unfold as it may. To know that whatever I do makes a difference. And to remember that so that the difference I make is a positive difference. And to always, always give thanks for the littlest things, those simple things that give us pleasure. Because we're all part of that whole, that butterfly effect. And let our wings move that little bit of air so that somebody else may also find the beauty of who they are. And may we all walk in beauty. And so it is. Amen. Okay. I think we must have a song, right? Along that effect.
Okay. You are the heart, you are the hands, you are the voice of spirit on earth, and who you are, and all you do is a blessing to the world. We are the heart, we are the hands, we are the voice of spirit on earth, and who we are, and what we do is a blessing to the world. I am the heart, I am the hands, I am the voice of spirit on earth, and who I am, and all I do is a blessing to the world. I am a blessing to the world.
Well, yes, you are a blessing to the world. And we affirm that every Sunday here when we receive the offering. And we receive that and bless it as we do here each week. So I invite you to take out your offering, put it in your hand or your heart, and bless it as we do. Divine love, as me, blesses and multiplies all that I am, all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive, and I am grateful.
And that is our song.
Na.
All that I am, all that I see, all that I've been, and all that I'll ever be is a blessing. It's so amazing, and I'm grateful for it all. All that I am, all that I see, all that I've been, and all that I'll ever be is a blessing. It's so amazing, and I'm grateful for it all, for it all.
Holy Sweet Spirit, Mother, Father, God, indeed, grateful for it all. Grateful for all the experiences, all the beauty, all the opportunities, all the blessings. Grateful for just this moment, and the moment after this one, and the next. And grateful for the understanding of the divinity that lies within each one of us. Grateful for the path that we walk, the understandings that we gain. And we send these gifts forward across our community and the larger community, and indeed across the planet, that each individual may find that spark of their divinity, find the path that they are on, walk it with intentionality, walk it in beauty, and create heaven on earth. And let us do that in our lifetime. And so it is. Amen. Thank you much.
The really hot news is that doing service will awaken beauty within your spirit. Other news? Check out our website if you want to take a look at any of the updates, the calendar, inspirational messages. It's a great place to go. The new Daily Word books, which we read from this morning, both in small and large print, are available in the bookstore in the lobby. And I encourage you to focus your prayer request and then express it either in writing back at the table at the back of the chapel here, or in prayer with with Mary or Zilpha, our prayer chaplains today.
Along that line, it's my honor to take your prayer requests. You do today. And I'm going to take them to Unity Village, and we will put them in the prayer chapel, which sits on top of the Silent Unity building, and they go into the walls, literally, and will be prayed on by Silent Unity for 30 days. So whatever prayer request you put in today, the church will hold it for a week, and then we send them on as hand-carried this time by a messenger. So there we go. I think it's time to form a circle around the perimeter. Well, I don't forget around the perimeter, but partway around the perimeter.
Yes, there is peace on earth, and yes, it begins with me. Yes, there is peace on earth, the peace that was meant to be. With God as Creator, united all are we. Yes, we walk with each other in perfect harmony. Yes, peace begins with me, and this is the moment.